Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Coffee Fest, happening in Tacoma, Washington next week. Head to coffeefest.com/leadership to register for the leadership workshop that I'll be co-presenting on the 14th of November. It's a full-day workshop and it's got lunch included as well as access to the trade show. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, we're talking about speaking your truth in the coffee industry. So over the last couple of days, I've been receiving a lot of comments and emails and messages on social media about the subject of securing your supply chain and the discussion that I had with Chad Trevick on the podcast earlier this week. And I gotta say, it's been exciting and encouraging to see the number of people coming forward saying thank you for speaking truth and thank you for bringing people on this podcast that are prepared to speak truth to the subjects that we're facing as an industry. And so I thought what we talk about today is the idea of what not speaking truth results in and where it's gotten us as an industry. We as an industry tend to want to make sure that everybody feels good, and it's awesome. Like that's a big part of what our jobs are, especially in in cafes. You know, we're there to provide hospitality. We go to different regions in the world and we meet coffee producers, and it's a big love fest, we hope. You know, we meet with our roasters, we do cupping sessions, and again, we hope it's a big love fest. But here's the thing, friends. Amongst that love fest, we've got to be prepared to engage in discourse. We've got to be prepared to talk about the things that are perhaps not so lovely to talk about. And the idea of the current coffee crisis, it being a price crisis or a branding crisis, is really important. And it's something that people have avoided talking about because it's an unsavory subject, and also because they don't understand it. It was a very difficult subject to start getting my head around, so I can really relate to people thinking, look, it's too hard to understand, so I'm just not going to bother. But the way you're going to learn about it is through engaging in discussion with people who know more than you about it. And a part of it is when I've spoken to people who are importers, who are exporters, who are producers, who are salespeople in green coffee, a lot of them are happy to speak to me off the record because they cannot risk anyone knowing what they know. A lot of companies have a lot of shit that they don't want people to know about. And all that's gotten us is to a situation where we have potentially started to see the long-term demise. Well, let me say that in a different way. We've potentially started to see the now upcoming rapid demise of our own industry. And we are now beholden, as we've always been, but more so now than ever, we are beholden to the coffee farmers that we did not take any notice of as a majority of people. There were definitely people in our industry that were taking notice of coffee farmers, and a lot of them are green buyers. You know, industry badasses like Mark Dundon and Jeff Watts and who else do I know? Ryan Brown and Charlotte Malival, and they're just a couple of the green buyers that I know who have been advocating in a massive way for making sure that we take care of the farmers. And they themselves have been big advocates in making sure that they, you know, we had Sasha Sestic, who was just recently on the podcast talking about how it's his duty and his absolute honor and priority to not only take care of the producers he purchases from, but also to build out and to take over and build out coffee farms as experimental projects that can hopefully help cultivate information that gets out there, that they can disseminate to coffee farms to help them improve their practices and profitability and yield. My point with this episode of the conversation, though, is we have to stop shying away from the difficult subjects and the difficult conversations. And it's happening across the spectrum. I am starting to become acutely aware of how many business owners are struggling in a big way to talk about the fact that they don't understand what they're doing when it comes to running a business. And it's a big reason why I wanted to be a part of this leadership workshop with Coffee Fest. The necessity to provide approachable leadership discussions that don't vilify people for not understanding what they're doing is important. And look, I'm really glad to be doing it with Coffee Fest for that reason. They bring in a lot of people who are coming into owning cafes and roasteries and other hospitality businesses. But if we don't encourage people who are business owners to start having the opportunity to speak their truth, like their proper truth, not just the truth that stops them from feeling shame. And shame is a big word that we as an industry operate around as a pivot point. If there's anything that I know for sure is that a lot of people are making decisions because they don't want to expose their shame. And shame is a big part of what's stopping us from just getting on with getting shit done. And so whether it comes to business ownership, whether it comes to employment, whether it comes to the idea of not knowing how to secure your supply chain, if it comes to the idea of, well, like, I want to talk to my co-workers about the buying philosophy of the business that we're working for, and I don't know how to start that conversation, you may fuck it up. All of these conversations, you may fuck them up, and that's fine. Go in with the intention of having conversations with different people again and again and again. And I've said this on this podcast before. The big driving force behind us growing as an industry has to be that we each have the courage to speak our truth. A couple of my guests on the podcast this year have said to me that perhaps when they came and had conversations with me on the podcast, that perhaps they said too much and revealed too much. And, you know, there are times that I sometimes think that maybe I've said too much, maybe I've revealed too much, and usually about my own personal life. Somebody said that to me today, and that's what's sparking this discussion today. And what I want to say to you is, we have this platform, this podcast, so that it's a space the industry can come to and know that they're going to get nothing but truth. They're going to get nothing but people's honesty and integrity and real shit. I vet people that come on this podcast quite heavily. I don't want to talk to anyone who's going to talk shit. And I only want to talk to people who are going to be upfront and real. And they come with a lot of courage. And so I'm going to invite you to do the same thing outside of your comfort zone as well in your everyday life, and take that courage with the intention of expanding your own knowledge and bringing some more truth to the industry so that we can stop hiding behind veils that could ultimately be the demise of our industry before it's too late. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.